if you're new to selling, you're interested in or trying to get more comfortable with selling, you're probably closer than you think and closer than you might be giving yourself credit for. So hopefully we can make some steps forward in that direction today. So just a brief background on me. I've got about 37 plus years as a salesperson, manager, and about 10, 12 years coaching experience. I've had a pretty strong track record for finding and driving new business. Always loved that throughout my career. And went to the University of Rhode Island and so on, and been in the area. I live in West Hartford, Connecticut. So enough about me. So right off the bat here, in terms of, again, if you're selling or some part of the process is maybe not as comfortable as you'd like it to be, we can look at sort of reframing it. Selling is really a lot like networking. So this is where I think a lot of the activity that is involved in selling are things that many of which you are probably, or some of which you're probably already comfortable with. I'm sure as you go into conversations, you do some degree of preparation. You have some questions that you ask during the conversation. Maybe you're preparing some. Maybe you've given some thought to handling objections that you might face. And I would say 85%, maybe more, of selling is listening and learning. It's not this, what gives selling can give selling a bad name and make people feel uncomfortable. It's not this hard-nosed, high-pressure, asking funky, kinds of questions. And I would imagine most of you are fairly comfortable listening and learning. So, hopefully that sort of changes your perspective just a little bit as we kind of continue this hopefully a conversation. And feel free to interrupt if you have a question or a concern. So try to look at it differently. So as you go into conversations with prospective or existing clients that you're trying to expand your business with, there's a variety of information you want to gather. You might already be comfortable and familiar with trying to understand a customer's business, maybe the trends, how they're doing, maybe what that person is interested in. What I find sometimes is some information that people new to selling, and by the way, I neglected to mention, I focus most of my time on working with founders, CEOs of startups. Do some work with other sales professionals that are highly experienced and want a sounding board. But most of my time is with CEOs and founders. So what I find with frequently, not all the time, with people that are new to selling is they're not yet pursuing information about how a decision is made. What does the process look like? Who's involved? What are the steps? What's the timeline for each sort of step in the process, for example? If you look at if you were to write down each of the people involved in a client making a decision, what criteria are they each using? Someone might be financially oriented. Another person might have an operational, perspective, for example. So, that's an area that maybe to give some thought to if you're not currently pursuing that information. If you look back at maybe opportunities that you're currently pursuing, maybe if they're a bit of a struggle, ask yourself, well, how well do I understand? Could I write down the decision process step by step and who's involved, how long it'll take, and and so on. And if not, that's okay. I think identifying information that you don't know is a good thing. Don't be afraid of it. So going back to this the idea I was sharing before about selling being listening and learning, is let your curiosity kind of drive a lot of your activities by asking questions and trying to fill in some of the blanks. And certainly we'll talk about competition in a minute. So, but another area that on top of the listening and learning, and sort of an old VP of sales of mine said, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in the proportion you have them. And that's kind of stuck with me 35 years later. So another thing that you're probably somewhat used to, maybe very used to, is preparing for meetings. And so the homework you do before going into a discussion, whether it's on Zoom or in person, however you're handling that discussion, the homework you do will absolutely be a huge differentiator for you. And it'll make a huge difference in your comfort and confidence. I can tell you after all these years and having met a lot of other salespeople and interviewed and so on, and been on both sides, that a great majority of people in selling roles do not spend a lot of time doing enough homework, understanding the company, the person, the challenges, and so on. And it comes out either way. So I'm sure you've probably all heard of, or maybe heard of, Stephen Covey, a world-renowned sort of self-help author and so on. And you think about what he said about seeking first to understand before being understood. If you just focus on that, if you come away with one thing, from this discussion, that you kind of change your perspective about, you try to listen and learn a lot, and that'll provide a lot of guidance for you that should make you feel a lot more comfortable that you're on at least a sensible path. So how preparation can help? Well, if you're pursuing an opportunity and you have a ton of knowledge about a client's business and the people, that'll allow you to kind of maneuver through a decision process and be creative in how you're approaching the situation. And if you've done the homework, if you put the time in, and sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, it really depends on what you're selling and type of clients you're going after and so on. It'll vary. I'm telling you, the knowledge you gain will absolutely separate you from competition. You will stand out because you've taken the time to do some homework. Okay. So understanding your competition, not that this should be your primary focus, but it should be part of, again, the homework you're doing. And notice we haven't said anything about asking hard-nosed closing questions or anything. This is all really about listening and learning and building up your knowledge. So what are they offering? How similar or dissimilar are the solutions? What kind of relationships do they have? Does your competition have inside your prospective customer? What else are, this third bullet here, what else is the customer sort of grappling with? What existing projects do they have going on? And how much attention and focus and resources do those require? But certainly one of the things you're looking for as you pursue an opportunity is some reasonable sense of urgency that they're going to do something in an area where you can provide a solution in some reasonable amount of time, whether it's a few weeks, a month, a few months, and so on. So you may find, by the way, learning about other projects, you may find new opportunities you didn't know about before. One other note about another competitor is that if you haven't given it some thought about, is doing nothing. What I mean by that, not you doing nothing, it's the client not changing what they're doing. They continue going the way they're going, or they're doing it internally, or using an existing, they're an incumbent, partner. Whether they're, despite some significant challenges, you'll see, I'm sure you've seen, that clients will have a tendency maybe to, to stay there, unless there's a bit, sort of a better case. So but putting the time in really to now really leverage this as a unique strength. And so now again, selling maybe it's new to you. So when you have made some time to reach out to prospective clients, one, just try to be in the right mindset. It's rest, nutrition, and so on. It's like it's a little bit like playing a sport or anything. You want to have a kind of a good mindset. Think about what times of day make sense for you and where you see customers being most responsive. And if I had to pick one question that I learned about early in my career that made the most difference in my effort to try to find new business, is when you're calling someone, no matter who answers the phone, whether if you're someone who is in front of a gatekeeper, if you will, for someone you're trying to get to, always ask them if it's whoever's answering it, if it's convenient to talk, and show some interest in what they're doing in their day. I guarantee you, and you've probably been on the receiving end of people that are just sort of barge right into the conversation, that 95% of the people in selling roles don't do that. And you'll almost feel like the body language sort of relax, on the phone, when you show some respect and some interest in people that you're, whomever they are, who is answering the phone. So I get a lot of questions about how do I get going? How do I start building a pipeline of opportunities? Again, if this is something new to you or you haven't done for a while and it's a little uncomfortable, one of the suggestions I have is to start with a small number of people that you know and trust. You don't have to introduce yourself. They already know who you are, and they know what your organization is about, maybe the value you're trying to provide. So you kind of eliminate, sort of that, part of it in this early going. And your goals are not necessarily to close a deal. What you're looking for are input, suggestions, ideas about whether potential target clients, and or how to approach them. And I sort of have this here about referrals to other companies. I had a lot of conversations and questions about when you're asking for referrals. I would suggest that when you're asking for referrals, ask for referrals to other organizations than the organization that the person you're talking with is part of. It'll be a lot more comfortable for them to do that. They'll be much more willing to help. It can put people, not all the time, but many times put people in an awkward position if you're asking them for potential opportunities in their company. So just a thought there. And once you've done that, when I say small number, by the way, if you haven't done this for a while, I'm talking single digits. Start with something bite-sized. And once you've done that and kind of had conversations with that small number, then put together another small group. Maybe it's the same size, maybe a little larger. Think about what went well and it didn't go well, and then repeat the process. And you will start getting a lot of good ideas and probably some opportunities. One note here: consistency is really important. What I mean is, if today's Wednesday, so you decide, okay, Friday I'm going to put some time into, and then you don't do it for 2 weeks, it's really hard. And then that's another 3 weeks. It's really hard to build a pipeline. I also understand that as a CEO, founder, senior executive in, in a small organization, you have a million things going on. It's not easy. If you can, as much as you can, to block time off to be consistent every week, and if it's possible daily, but I realize that may not be possible, as often as you can, have a consistent effort, and that will accelerate the development of your pipeline. So if you're doing demos, pilots, if it's a number of organizations I've talked with and worked with are doing these. So some things to think about is to try to control the environment. So a couple of important things is try to work with the prospective client on defining what success looks like. What are the criteria? And if you have and I think it's important to have a document that outlines what that success looks like, so that if you get to once you get to the end of the 30, 45, whatever the period of time is, you can point back to it and say, well, we achieved those, those milestones or whatever, however we mutually define success. And that should help you in making the process of closing the deal more comfortable if you put that time in. So how you're mutually defining success, what the timelines are, and what the criteria are for what they would consider a successful pilot. So this part of selling, closing is something that can be a challenging topic, one of concern to if you're new to selling. So again, just trying to change your perspective. It really should be you're continuing to learn and continuing to figure out who's involved, how the decision's going to be made. So you're just trying to understand what the next step is in the process. So if you, for example, if you've been through you had a pilot to do with a client, and you've met those the definition of success, and you haven't yet identified what the next steps are in the decision process, then that's the next question. Those are the next questions toward trying to close the deal. How's the decision going to be made? Who's involved? What criteria are being used? How well does the solution where we've been talking about align with the goals you're trying to achieve? So it's more listening and learning than it is sort of hard nose. Couple of thoughts. I have a sales coaching blog where I'm just trying to share ideas, and I've made my share of mistakes in 38 years, that's for sure. And so ideas about a couple of articles that I thought might be helpful for you. And happy to, as I mentioned, if any of you would like to have a discussion one-on-one about questions you have, challenges you're facing, happy to try to share ideas and my experience, and more than happy to spend an hour or so with you. And that's no charge. Happy to do that. In addition, by the way, every Friday morning, I send out emails to subscribers. Same idea, just trying to share ideas that I have from my experience. A lot of them come from what I'm writing about, come from conversations like these, where questions come up, concerns come up from just people that I'm networking with, or clients that I'm working with. So you can just go to my site and scroll down and sign up, or send me put a note in the chat, or happy to add you if you prefer not to go to the site. So. Anything else anyone wanted to try to cover? We got a few more minutes here.
I have kind of an odd little niche business. I publish cookbooks that I sell mainly to nonprofits. So they're sold in like museum gift shops, national park gift shops, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so I took about 250 of my seconds, they got an event cover or something, and gave away almost all of them with a business card stapled to them. Because I'm really terrible at, asking, like, hey, or I don't know how to do sales, but I can, I found it easier to just, hey, do you want a free cookbook? And then you just naturally kind of chat with people.
Yeah.
But I feel like and I've tried sending out, samples and letters and things. That worked really well. I had a great response. I got some new customers from the trade show, blah, blah, blah. But, but as far as, through the rest of the year, I don't know how to pick up new business. And I don't know if it's that I don't know how to start. I have no idea what I'm doing, I guess.
Well, it sounds, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you, Emery?
No. I think I'm at a loss as to, like, I'm a little bit shy, so I'd love to be able to, mail samples and have a letter that, or something that is, like how do I get people to actually respond, or, I don't know. I don't know what my question is because I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, I think you have more of an idea than you're giving yourself credit for. It sounds like you're comfortable just chatting with people about cooking and what they're interested in, maybe, or if they're interested in nonprofit, and that's a great beginning to the conversation. That is so much better than saying, do you want a cookbook? Because then people feel like you're trying to sell them something. Yeah. A great majority of, this is why I kind of mentioned about how 85% of it really is networking, is a great majority of selling, and maybe you just don't even use the word, a great majority of networking is just really showing interest in other people and what they're doing, and building a relation, sort of a connection, sort of a relationship with those people that you think may potentially be clients. And so you're given that you're comfortable doing that, as much as you can have those kinds of informal, relaxed conversations, that's a great way to start. And then you can have and this is, I realize you only have a couple of minutes, but at some point in those conversations, you're trying to see how they, what cookbooks they like and what kind of food they're cooking and so on, and see what their interest might be in what you're publishing. And I'm more than happy if you wanted to talk offline to kind of help you with some ideas about a flow, not a script, because it would feel unnatural, but just a flow of a few questions to ask when you kind of get to that point in the conversation where you're trying to see if there's some interest there. Like after you've developed a little rapport and you've just gotten to know each other and it's become comfortable. So does that make sense, Emery?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Yeah, I think the word sales just scares me. Like, I don't want to sell you something. Like, if you want to buy it, I'm here to help. But
exactly. And it's, if you think about there's sort of a process as you getting to know someone who might be a client. And first is like an initial connection. So however you might be introduced to them. And then maybe as through some conversation, usually casual and of some mutual interest, develop a little rapport. And once that rapport starts to develop, there's inherently some trust that they're developing in you and what you're doing, because you're not just trying to sell something. You're interested in them and what they're doing and what their challenges are. And once you kind of move through that a bit, again, through some comfortable conversation, like similar to what you're already comfortable having, then it's much easier, hopefully much more comfortable to see, are they interested or are they not? And you know what? If they're not, that's fine too, but they may have enjoyed the conversation with you so much, they may tell 3 other people about what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. And yeah, it sounds much less scary, and taking the, not, I feel like, there's the word sales and the word closing, and I'm like, I can't do sales. What the hell is, how do I close? Taking those things out of it makes it seem much more doable. Yeah. I think also, like, what I'd love to be able to do would be to come up with a way, kind of a step beyond just marketing, but like how to do, sales and close a deal, like through the mail or via email or something. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's depending on how you're interacting with someone, it'll change. That's why I say, don't even use the word selling. Use it as relationship building or networking. Yeah, and the closing it'll be a natural conclusion, one way or the other, of that sort of relationship, networking, process. You'll, as you said, stay focused on that relationship building. And I think hopefully it'll become a lot more comfortable for you.
Yeah. Okay, great. My blood pressure just went down. Thank you.
Didn't even reduce your salt intake. Look at that.